Pick back up in the bab, and this is يعني at the end of the bab of شروط الصلاة. We will inshallah after this begin the bab which is one of the funnest abwab, which is صفة الصلاة, the actual description of the salah. طيب, here the muallif picks up with يجب النية. As you may have noticed in some of the مخطوطات it will say تجب النية. Like for example the one I have in front of me, it says يجب. When I studied this way back, it said tajibu, right? And I'd asked my teacher, like, which is the correct one? And he said, well, this is the khilaf in the manuscript, because in a way they're both correct. If you say tajibu, if you're talking about a niyyah, right? Because a niyyah is muannath. Yajibu, if you're talking about a rajul, yani the person, right? So it's an interesting thing. But anyway, it doesn't affect the meaning any. But those who like, sometimes we read a matan and people are like, it's a mistake. Well, it might not be a mistake. The mutun sometimes have differences between them. And it's not like the Quran where we're going to get into like a big fight about it. Rather, this is, either way it's correct. Tayyib. So what is the meaning here? That the niyyah is obligatory for the one leading the salah or the one being led. Meaning, if you're going to lead the salah, then a part of your intention is that you're going to be the imam. And if you're going to be following the imam, then a part of the intention is that you're following. Now again, you don't have to read a particular script like, I'm making salah behind this guy on the madhab. Like some people have weird stuff like that. Like, it's not like that. But in your heart, you have to make your niyyah that I'm going to be making salah in jama'ah behind an imam. Why? Because the ahkam of the one being led in salah are different from the one that's praying by himself. And they're different from the one that's leading salah. So all that has to be a part of your intention. You have to be mindful of it. For example, the imam, when he gets up from ruku', what does he say? Sami Allahu liman hamida. And then he says, Rabbana wa lakal hamd. What about the one being led? When he gets up from ruku', what does he say? Rabbana wa lakal hamd. He doesn't say Sami Allahu liman hamida. Ala rajih. The Shafi'i have a different opinion, but this is the correct opinion. So there's a difference. The imam, if it's Fajr, Maghrib or Isha, in the first 2 rak'at, what do? Do you read silently or out loud? Out loud. And if you're praying behind the imam, do you read silently or out loud, or do you listen to the imam? Either which way, your salah is different. Right? You're not gonna, if the imam says Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, and you start behind him, Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, then it's no longer salah in jama'ah. That's not correct, right? So if you're praying behind the imam and your niyyah is to be an imam, that salah is batala. Because the ahkam are different. This is where you go back. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. So you will get for what you intended. If you intended to be an imam and you're not the imam, this is an issue with your salah. Tayyib. So this is the first thing. Now, could you change the niyyah? Meaning you start praying behind the imam, could you change to lead? Right? Now this is a very interesting fiqhi mas'ala. Before this, let me just revise the changing of niyat to make sure the Tullab ilm have understood this from the last dars, and then we'll get into this one here. Tayyib, if you begin praying a fard salah, for example, tayyib, you began thinking it's time for dhuhr. Tayyib, you made takbir. Your niyyah now is for what? Fard salah. Dhuhr, fard. While you're praying, you realize it's not time for dhuhr yet. The time for dhuhr has not entered. Can you now change your niyyah for nafal? Yes. Ijma'an? Yes. Ijma'an here, I'm talking about khilaf ulama. Yes, because you could change from al-fard to al-nafal. Tayyib. And your nafal here is mutlaq. Tayyib. That's one. Let's say you knew it's not time for dhuhr, right? And you said, I'm going to pray dhuhr anyway. Not time yet. You start your salah, and now you started your salah, now you think, oh, you know what? That's not right. Let me just change it to nafil. Can you? No, you cannot. Why? Because salah was batila to begin with. If you knew the time for dhuhr was not in, you couldn't. Tayyib, good. Let's say you were praying a nafil, and you said, you know what, I don't have time, I'm just going to make this my fard. Can you? No. You cannot. You were praying a fard salah, you made your niyyah for dhuhr, you started to make salah, and you say, you know what, I haven't prayed fajr, I'm just going to make this my fajr. Can you?
No.
No, you cannot. Because mu'ayyan, yani it was specific, and you cannot now change from one fard to the other. Tayyib, you were praying nafal, and you decide to change that niyyah to another nafal. Now this was not in the matan. This is, I went back to al-muntaha and al-ikna' and the shuru' to bring these fawaid out to the tullab. And that's why people are always like, I just want to get the book. Well, that's great, but if you don't have a teacher, good luck. I mean, la adri wallah alam, how are you going to understand a matan without a teacher? Especially these mutun. Tayyib. So a nafal to a nafal, can you? Excellent answer. Depends. Mu'ayyan to mutlaq. And you were going to make duha, mu'ayyana, particular, right? Or let's say witr. You were going to make witr. You started one rak'ah, witr, and you say, you know what, I'm just going to make this mutlaqan.
Yes.
You cannot.
You can, right?
You cannot. Because you're going from mu'ayyan to mutlaq. Mu'ayyan, you were clear. You made your niyyah for witr. Mu'ayyanan. And then to go to mutlaq, you cannot. Tayyib, mutlaq to mu'ayyan. You just decide, I'm just going to make rak'atayn, no particular type, just mutlaqan, nafal mutlaq. You started and you said, I'm just going to make this my witr. Yes, you can. Because mutlaqan, they were not mu'ayyan. You can go from mutlaq to mu'ayyan, but not from mu'ayyan to mutlaq. Remember, nafal, right? If it's mutlaq, then you did not make the niyyah of a particular type. So it was mutlaq. That now you made it mu'ayyan, it is still a nafal, that is permissible.
That's why when it comes to fard, it's the other way around.
It's the other way around, because now fard is mu'ayyan. You're not going mutlaq to mu'ayyan, you're going from mu'ayyan to mutlaq. Tayyib, or mu'ayyan to mu'ayyan, which you cannot.
Can you go from a fard to a mu'ayyan sunnah?
You cannot, because you're still going, you cannot begin with mu'ayyan and go to anything else. When you began your niyyah mu'ayyanan, particularly, you cannot switch that.
Except you can go to a nafal.
From,
I like a mutlaq min nafal.
so you,
Fard.
no, from fard to a nafal, you can go when you are going to with a particular situation from a stronger, meaning in the example we gave, why could you? Because the time for dhuhr had not come in, right? So here you are going from the higher to the lower, right? But when you are mu'ayyanan towards a particular thing, then to go to another mu'ayyan, it's going to have a sabab for it. Tayyib? So, for example, let me just finish this, then we'll go more into this, right? Can you go from mutlaq to mutlaq?
But even that depends, right?
Trick question. There is no change. From mutlaq to mutlaq, there is no change.
It's all mutlaq, it's all the same.
Yeah, so it's a trick question, because here you're not changing. And al-ikna' goes into this, al-muntaha and sharh al-biyut is amazing that how the depth they get into, right? And they say, well, there's no change, so you're not actually changing. So yes, you can go because it's the same thing. It's like saying, can I go from dhuhr to dhuhr? Well, of course, because you're already praying dhuhr, right? Tayyib. So, summarize. Nafal to fard, you cannot. Fard to fard, right? Fard to fard, you cannot. Nafal to fard, it's going to depend on the situation, but there is permissibility, right? Depending on fard to nafal. In the example we gave, right? No, so fard to nafal, right? So fard to nafal, you can in certain situations.
So nafal to fard, no.
Nafal to fard, no.
Fard to nafal, no.
Fard to fard,
No.
no. Fard to nafal, possibly. Mu'ayyan to mutlaq, yes, depending on situation, but mu'ayyan to mutlaq you can. طيب. Mutlaq to mu'ayyan, no.
So what's an example of mutlaq to mu'ayyan?
طيب. Mutlaq to mu'ayyan, for example, you started witr. Mu'ayyan, you're saying mutlaq to mu'ayyan or mu'ayyan to mutlaq?
Let's start with mu'ayyan to mutlaq.
Mu'ayyan to mutlaq. You started to pray witr, but you decided I want to make more raka'at, so I'm just going to make this my raka'atain, and then I'm going to pray witr later. You can. طيب. Mutlaq to mu'ayyan you cannot. Okay? So other way you could not.
The 2 rak'ahs to witr you can.
You cannot, because you started mutlaqan and now the muayyan needed the niyyah in the beginning. Tayyib. Mutlaq to mutlaq, there is no change. Tayyib. So let's get into some examples. You were praying rak'atain before dhuhr, and you say, I'm just going to make this my dhuhr salah. La. Right? Because that is a niyyah that was needed there. You were praying rak'atain, or let's say now you were praying fajr, you realize I haven't prayed isha, I'm just going to make this my isha. La. Tayyib. But you started to pray dhuhr and you realize the time for dhuhr is not in. You began with the mu'ayyan fard niyyah, now you switched to nafal, you could.
Can you switch to sunnah prayer? Like at the mu'ayyan sunnah prayer of dhuhr?
You could, but there are time for dhuhr is not in, right?
Say it isn't.
Once it's in, you could.
So you can go in that sense from mu'ayyan to mu'ayyan, as long as the second mu'ayyan is lower than the first mu'ayyan.
Yes. But that's also going to depend on the situation, right? So, could you begin knowing that you're going to switch? La. Tayyib? Meaning you think I'm going to start with fard, but then I'm just going to switch anyway, which I don't know why you would do, but this is something discussed.
So if you're like traveling, you're praying qasr, so you're praying dhuhr 2 rak'ahs and then you accidentally stand up for the third, the intention switch on that.
La, your intention didn't switch, you made a mistake. Any?
Yeah, but do you have to change your intention?
La.
to move?
La. You in that situation you can do 2 things. One, you can pray it 4, right? Because except for the Hanafiya says it's wajib for you to make rak'atain. The other 3 madhahib said you could make 4, even though it's not ula, it's not better, right? Or you can make sujood sahu as a mistake, right? But that's different situation because you're still making the same salah. You're not.
What's afdal?
Afdal is that you do not finish, right? You make sujood sahu because really it was a mistake, right? Tayyib. So let's continue into the bab and we'll get into more examples here. Tayyib. Now you are you're going to lead salah. Tayyib. You come, Adam comes, people are waiting, they're like, Sheikh, lead salah. You, in your niyyah for salah, you make the niyyah of leading. Tayyib. While leading, you decide, man, I don't want to lead salah. Come on, man, all these people are going to be picking. I'm just gonna follow. Can you? La. You cannot leave that niyyah unless there is a sabab for it. We'll talk about some asbab for it. What if you are following, Imam starts to lead, Adam starts to lead, you start praying behind him and you're like, man, I'm just going to pray on my own. Forget it, bro. I didn't try and pray behind this brother. Right? He's off the manhaj, right? So we'll get to those. But we're talking about mutlaqan right now. Right? Mutlaqan. Can you begin your niyyah as being somebody who's being led and then go mufradan? La.
For that reason.
Exactly. Good. So that is the asal. That you cannot. Your salah will become batila. Tayyib. Then the muallif continues that if you begin with the niyyah of praying alone, you cannot then join a jama'ah. It is not correct. What does that mean though? You start making salah. You want to make dhuhr salah. You get to, let's say, if you've been for Umrah or Hajj, you have those traveling masajid, those masajid that are for the musafir. It's not a regular. And what happens there is you have 2-3 jama'ats usually, because people are going, somebody's making jama'ah, somebody's praying dhuhr, somebody's making with their own jama'ah. So you go in, you're like, I'm just going to make rak'atain. You start rak'atain, and then you see people come, and they're praying dhuhr and jama'ah. So you're mufrad, you see a jama'ah, you're like, I'm just going to scoot over to them and join their jama'ah. I've seen this happen, right? But as the muallif says, you cannot, right? You cannot. Tayyib? And if you're praying alone and you want to join another jama'ah to lead them in fard, right? Or to pray a fard, right? Meaning, you're praying, they're praying, and you decide, I'm going to go and lead them. Right? I haven't seen that happen, but I'm sure it would. So you cannot. Tayyib? And if you are praying behind an imam and you decide to change your niyyah to a mufrad salah, your salah is batil, it's invalid, except bil udr, except with a valid excuse. Now here in Zād, it does not mention excuses, but in the shuruh of Zād, there are a number that are listed. For example, one of the ones they give is sickness. Let's say you start to pray behind the imam, and then you just hot sweat, you start feeling muscle aches, and you're like, I got corona, right? And now the imam, mashallah, is going to lead this really long salah, and you're sick, right? Like you have a udhr, you have an excuse, so you break away, and even you can stand there, finish your salah faster, and leave. Okay? That is an excuse. Other udhr that's presented are wars and things like this. Let's say you were assigned to be a guard for the Muslims, and you were making salah, and then you realize something's going to attack, so you finish your salah quickly, and you're not praying Salatul Khawf, but those are udhr that's given. One of the ones, and may Allah protect us, if the imam becomes kafir, may Allah protect us, right? Because then your salah is batila behind that imam, and that's a different issue. But khair, if you have a shari'i udhr, then you could, but otherwise, if you're praying behind an imam and you decide to make your salah your own salah, mufradan, your salah becomes batil. Illa bi'udr. Yani, the muallif here says, bila udrin. Yani, he gives a exception. Tayyib. And the regular way is that with the invalidation of the imam's salah, the people behind him, salah becomes invalid, except if he assigns somebody to lead in his place. Not before. Let me explain. You start salah, the imam's praying, and he passes gas. I don't know, right? Different cultures. Tayyib. Now that he passed gas, what's the hukm on his salah? It's invalid. What's the hukm on the people praying behind him? Well, if he steps out and somebody else steps in to lead in his place, their salah is fine.
Does he have to assign that person?
He doesn't have to, right? This is the sunnah that if the imam walks away, somebody steps up. This happens all the time. People start leading salah and then they realize, I don't have wudu. So what's the hukm on their salah?
Their salah
Is invalid. It's batila. So that imam, he does not make taslim. People make taslim. There's no taslim because salah is batila, right? That imam should just walk away. He can pull somebody forward, and if he doesn't, somebody else should just go forward and lead, and the salah of the people, they continue from where they were praying. And there are ahadith on this, sahihah. So there is no issue with this, right? Even if you look at the hadith of Umar radiyan anhu when he was stabbed and so on, you will find ahadith and marfu'a, mawqufan and aqawlan. I mean, I'm not going to go deep. There are clear adillah on this issue. Tayyib? So if the imam, now in a different case scenario, the imam starts salah, he passes gas, or whatever else, right? And he decides, you know what? I'm not going nowhere. I'm going to continue this salah. And he finishes that salah. What's the hukm on his salah? What's the hukm on the salawat of the people behind him?
It depends if they know or not.
Let's say they don't know. Their salawat are batilat. But the itham will only go on the imam. They're free from that sin.
They don't have to make it up.
They do not have to make it up.
Even though they just missed the salah.
They-
How would they-
again,
how would they ever know that?
if they never find out, then Allah does not hold you accountable for what you don't know. But
they're
that
guilty for
imam,
missing it, but not charged, basically.
well, they're not guilty. The imam is guilty for his salah being invalid and of everybody behind him.
He gets crucified.
He gets, may Allah, this is why I hate to lead salah. It's a big responsibility. People don't know it's a big responsibility, you know. Now that imam, and again, if you do your best, I'm not discouraging people from leading salah, but that imam, if he knew, right, like he knew salah is invalid and he continued, in front of Allah, he will answer for himself and he will answer for everybody salah behind him. Now, I know this seems like I'm going in detail, but I'm actually summarizing, right? Ulama had like deep discussions on this issue. Some ai they said the salawat of those people is not invalid, right? Because like you said, they don't know. But that's wrong. Why? Because their salawat not invalid, then the imam would not be responsible for their salawat. So in actuality, their salawat are invalid. But if they're invalid, are those people held accountable for not making salah? No, because they didn't know. Tayyib, if he finishes salah and he tells people, by the way, I didn't have wudu. Now what?
Then they have to make it up.
Then they have to make it up.
What if they come to know later?
If they get to know, they need to make that salah. Right?
Even if it's out of wudu.
I mean, it will be qada then, right? It will be a makeup. Right? But if they never know, let's say, and this is actual, like in the sharh of Muntaha al-Iradat, which is one of the bigger mutun in the madhab, they gave a very good example. They said that if an imam leads salah and he did not realize he didn't have wudu, he finishes the salah, the people get up and leave, and while he's going home, like, you know, I was going to say driving, but the example doesn't give driving. Let's say he left the place, he realizes he didn't have wudu. Does he have to call or get a hold of everybody? No. Here he repeats his salah and the people do not have to. They left. Unless they find out, they will not be held accountable because and in this case that I gave, he didn't realize it. So it's not a sin on him because he didn't realize it. But he has to repeat his salah, but they do not. Right? But in another case scenario, that he realized it, and then he didn't tell anybody, and then he makes tawbah, yani, this is he has to repeat his salah, and some of the aimma said he has to repeat one salah for everybody. But this is not rajih, and it is not rajih, right? Because he's responsible. What is rajih? He just makes the tawbah. طيب خلاص. So طيب. And if the imam who is the imam al-hayy, in ahrama al-imam al-hayy, يعني if the neighborhood or the area assigned imam is not there, and he has a naib who starts to pray a salah in his place, and that imam returns, what do we do here? Okay? For example, you go to a masjid, and that masjid has Imam al-Hayy, like Imam al-Hayy, like today we will say an official imam, but this would be that the area and the people would assign an imam. This is the imam of that masjid. You're not just talking about somebody leading salah in the open. It's a masjid, it's assigned an imam. But he assigns somebody else that if I'm not here, you lead. Okay? Or, and he's not there, and then people are like, yeah, akhi, faddalu, khalas, you go lead. And that imam comes during the salah. Okay? If they continue the salah, this is fine. But if the person leading, realizing the Imam al-Hayy is here, backs up, and the imam leads, this is also permissible. طيب. دليل حيث متفق عليه ورسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, they went to the area of Banu Amr ibn Auf, and Rasulullah was away, so they told Abu Bakr radiyan to lead. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came, the people, Abu Bakr radiyan, he didn't used to look around in salah. He would always look at the place of sujood. But when he heard the commotion, he realized that people realized that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came and Abu Bakr is leading. Rasulullah was praying behind Abu Bakr radiyan. He made ishara for him to continue. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he made thanks to Allah that Allah honored him, that Rasul was praying behind him, but he backed up and Rasul led the salah. طيب? So this dalil shows us that in this particular, but this was something khasan for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Imam said that this then example is precedent is set for Imam al-Hayy. But let's say we're at the park and yani Adam is taking too long making wudu, and Ishaq starts the salah, and then when Adam comes, Ishaq goes, I want Adam to lead. Can he back out? La. He would invalidate his salah. Because regularly, as he began as the Imam, he cannot. But when you have adillah, then you have to follow the adillah.
What if the Imam al-Hayy comes when you're in your second rak'ah?
Khalas, you back up and he begins the salah and you pray and everybody prays behind him like if you had missed a part of the salah, and then you stop and he continues. Right?
So you would say in tashahhud and you would continue a final rak'ah?
You would pray, so there's two ways. One is you would pray behind him like he's praying, except when it's your salah is finished, you finish.
Okay.
Or he prays the way you would be praying, and then when you finish, he finishes his salah. Both ways can be done, meaning he will come and he will get in a situation where he can then, like for example, when he realizes this, he will let the person continue until the tashahhud and then he'll go in. Then he'll make rak'atain, right? And then he will sit for tashahhud. Now the people's 4 rak'ah is over, they will make taslim, then he will get up and he will make his rak'atain. Or the people will pray the way he's praying, right? But they will dip out at the time. But again, that's not the regular way to do it, right? These are all unusual situations. Regularly, if somebody comes to lead salah, tayyib. Now, this happened to me, a situation. I was in another country, and there was a alim, mufti, whatever, right? And his masjid had qurra, the young brothers who were huffaz of Quran. So he came quite a bit late. They waited for him. I was there, right? And then they said, one of the qurra, khalas, you lead. So one of those guys, he got up, he started leading salah. While he was leading salah, that imam came. But now, what that imam could have done is just prayed behind him. And if he went there and the qari stepped back, he could have went and led, right? But instead of all of that, what that imam did was start a second jama'ah in the same masjid. And this was Isha, so they were both out loud. So the qari was leading, and the imam was leading right behind him, another jama'ah. And whoever was coming in was then praying with him, right? We finished salah, I was like, Ya Allah, what is this? So I went to the imam. Imam said in the Hanafi maslak, I cannot pray behind him, which is not the Hanafi maslak, but he just made that up. He said, because I'm better than him, na'udhu billah, and I'm a mufti and alim, and he's only a qari, so my salah behind him is invalid, but his salah behind me is valid. See? So I told him, what about when Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiallahu anhu led Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in salah? Another sahih hadith, where Rasulullah was gone, and the Sahaba, they put Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiallahu anhu to make salah. Rasulullah came, and he joined the salah, and unlike the hadith of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Abdurrahman ibn Auf continued the salah. He didn't realize that Rasulullah was behind him, and Rasulullah prayed behind him. So who's adna and who's afdal? Obviously Rasulullah is afdal. What about Jibreel alayhi salam leading Rasulullah sallam in salah? Right? Who's afdal and who's adna, right? Obviously. So with all these adillah, you can't just make up your own, you have to follow the adillah. Tayyib, can you lead salah with a niyyah of nafal and the people behind you are praying fard?
Yes.
Okay? Now there is khilaf, even within the madhab and between madhahib and all of this. But what is the correct opinion? Yes. Because of the hadith in Sahih Muslim of Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu, who used to pray his Isha with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he would lead his people in Isha salah. His would be nafal and theirs would be fard. And you can also make a dalil from the hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam, because 5 times salawat are not fard on malaika. So Jibreel was making nafal, Rasulullah was making it fard salah, and so on and so on. So even there are ulama that said no, but the dalil has to be followed. Okay?
What did the alim say?
He just said, we're Hanafi, you're Wahhabi, we don't listen to you.
That's all he said.
That was the response. Khalas, inshallah, that's it for today.